Good morning, everybody. And it's so fun because I know everybody on here. This morning's program is on setting and hitting goals in 2021. And let's see, first there we go. A little housekeeping. There's the Q&A box for questions. Feel free to ask questions throughout, and then I'm going to open it up at the end too. I'm leaving some time there to do that at the end. This is a great time to practice focus skills. I know sometimes when I'm on webinars, it's really tempting to do other things at the same time. But if one wants to practice focus skills, here's a really good reason to do so. And then, of course, everybody's welcome to reach out afterwards if you have other questions or specific challenges with regard to what I'm presenting or anything else regarding what I do. So today, first, I want to talk about why me? Why should I be a person who's talking about goal setting? A little bit of a recap on this unprecedented year. Who else is really tired of that word right now? I'm so tired of things being unprecedented. I just want some precedented times. Prepping for 2021, and then, of course, Q&A. So why me? I've created a framework to help my clients, and primarily my clients are small business owners who are making the evolution from successful business owner to successful leader, because they are different skill sets. And the three different areas that I focus on with those clients are effective priorities, emotional intelligence, and exceptional teams. And I call that the E3 shift. So the shift from owner to leader. And specifically, these effective priorities, emotional intelligence, and exceptional teams are defined here. But for today's purpose, we're going to talk about the effective priorities, which is mastering the ability to manage energy and focus attention on the most important and impactful initiatives, projects, and tasks, which is essentially how you're going to spend your time in 2021. I mean, for those of you, you all know me, but the importance I put on making minutes matter, and whether your minute is taking a nap or whether your minute is working on something that's going to move your business forward, it's really important for those minutes to matter to you. So in 2020, when we look back, and January, perhaps you had your goals set for the year, just starting to kind of ramp up, come off the holidays, and get ready to make 2020 the best year yet. February, things were still humming along. Maybe you had even accomplished some of the smaller goals that you had set forth for your company or yourself in January. And then March hit, and everything went to hell in a handbasket. All the great ideas that everyone had to immediately shift. It's not to say that every single business tanked starting in March, but certainly almost every single business had to pivot in a tremendous way. Everything that was being done differently. And if you had set goals that were for the entire year, it is almost a certainty that they changed. The things that were important to you in February had changed markedly by March, simply because even if your business was still humming along, I mean, if a person were in retail or in the restaurant business, I mean, there were really dramatic shifts. But even if you had a business that wasn't as impacted financially, there were other things that were impacting you. Maybe the way you did business development because you weren't out seeing people anymore. Maybe for people who had children at home, the impact of having to do business from home and have children at home and all those things that you all know. And it wasn't just COVID hitting, but a lot of the fact that it's an election year, the fact that we had some of the more important social justice initiatives going on at the same time. I mean, it seems like every single month that has gone by this year, some other huge thing has happened that has impacted the way we live and the way we do business. And I work with I have an accountability partner up in New York, and we've been working together for 3 or 4 years. And he said a really smart thing when this hit. He said there's going to be 3 different kinds of people that come out of this. When it was just COVID early on, he said there's going to be people who say, this is a one-off, this will never happen again, we're just going to get through it and move forward. He said the second group is going to be people who say, we need to be ready for this to happen the next time. We should prepare, but then they'll never prepare. And he said, and then there's going to be the third group who says this isn't going to catch us unaware again, and we're going to be ready the next time something that can impact the business this tremendously hits. And so ideally, it is to be in that third group, to know that even if it's not a pandemic, if it's something that can impact your business in a huge way, that this year has taught us how to pivot. And that's what I'm talking about here in this program this morning, is in 2021, a plan to be prepared, nimble, and resilient, because I've been saying that nimble is the new normal. We can make a plan 5 years in advance and then just watch the world laugh at us. In fact, one of the things I did with some extra time this summer was I pursued a couple of certifications, and on one of the certifications, one of the questions was, where do you see yourself in 25 years? And I literally laughed out loud when I read it, and my answer was alive, because I'm pushing 60, and I thought, well, 85, yeah, I'd like to be alive at 85. But other than that, I don't really have any strong permanent goals for then. So nimble is one of the best things that we can be now when things are changing at such a rapid pace. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book, as many of you know here, called Making Minutes Matter. And in that, I created something called the Making Minutes Matter method. And it's essentially how to spend your minutes in a way that matters to you. And it's an entire process. And this morning, we're going to start on the goals piece of where we are in that process. Because in the full process, you've identified what your core values are, you know what your mission is, you know what your vision is, and from there, everything rolls down, but everything also rolls up from here. So the next piece in the process are, what goals do you have that will help you achieve your mission, which will achieve your vision, which will fulfill your mission, which all align with your core values. So if we just start with the goals piece here today, goals, everybody's heard of SMART goals, right? They're specific, they're measurable, they're action oriented, they're realistic, and they're time bound. And that's all great, but it's not enough. Goals need to be more than that. Annual is a good goal. I mean, developing goals for an annual, moving forward in an annual way is great, but quarterly is better. Think about last year. Any annual goal that people had to dramatically shift in the first quarter. So if you make smaller, more achievable goals on a quarterly basis, that certainly helps you be more nimble. It is a good idea. I mean, we're nearing the end of October, to start thinking now about what you want to achieve next year or in the first quarter of next year, because that way, you can hit the ground running, as they say. I mean, you think about what is it going to take to achieve those goals, which is what we're going to go into. And then step by step, how are you going to get there? Instead of starting thinking about goals after the holidays when everybody's head's kind of back in the game, then it's almost being a little bit behind, because there's a bit of work to do to be ready to start moving forward on those goals. Being prepared to pivot. That's another reason why these quarterly goals are good, because again, much of my business development has been done by meeting with people, going to networking events, going to conferences, meeting people for coffee, all those kinds of things. And all of that shut down March 17th or whatever it was this year. So how do you continue to do the work that you do in whatever a new normal might be? And it might not just be business development. It might be what you do for people. I mean, Andy would be a person who could, doing accounting work is one thing, but how much that shifted for people who all of a sudden had to understand PPP loans and EIDL loans, I think, or whatever, but the grants and the loans and all that kind of stuff, and all their clients that were coming to them with tons of questions. Those businesses had to pivot, and banks had to pivot tremendously because of what happened. So how can you structure your small business or your life, or even maybe your large business, so that you're prepared for, or as they say on Big Brother, expect the unexpected. And I think it is important to limit your goals to some number, and I prefer 3. It's not, when you think about the goal, there's a lot that goes into achieving the goal, which is the next steps that we'll go into here. But by limiting it to 3, you can limit your focus to those 3. It's kind of, you don't want to go to the old country buffet of goals, because our eyes are always bigger than our stomach. Everything looks good. Everything looks interesting. Well, maybe not at old country buffet. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But at the buffet, everything looks like a good option, but we can't possibly execute on all of it. So thinking very carefully about what are the ones that matter most to you, what are the ones that are going to make the biggest difference in your business, that are going to drive your revenues, that are going to drive your professional development, whatever it is that is most critical to your business in 2021, make those goals focus there, as opposed to just everywhere that would be nice, could be great, would make you more profitable and more successful. But choosing specifically which ones will be the ones that you will choose to spend your time and energy on. And then once you have those goals, it's critical to drill down to the details, because you only get to those goals by taking certain actions. And again, a step that we'll move into. The next step in this process is commitments. And I see many people have goals, and then they set to creating actions that will move them toward those goals. But I think there's a very important step in between, and that is commitments. Get back here. A commitment is an agreement you make with yourself to work on, focus on, or think about something that helps you advance toward your goals. When I'm working with my coaching clients, one of the things that we do to make certain that we're making progress toward the goals that have been set out at the beginning, and goals that were chosen by my clients, but that when we have our primary coaching sessions, at the end of those, we mutually agree upon up to 3 commitments that they will focus on for the coming weeks, the coming 1 or 2 weeks, that will move them toward their goals. And the reason there's only 3 commitments is because they're already busy people. But it's incremental progress that gets us to where we want to be. So it's often not a task that they are committed to. It's something that they might be committed to focusing on. They might be committed to thinking about. They might be committed to, or it could be something that they're working on. But that commitments piece, in my view, the word commitment has more teeth in it than the word goal. If it says, my goal is to blank, versus I am committed to blank. What you're telling your brain in those words is much more substantial than just a goal is important, but it's a little bit loose. It's a little bit like, yeah, that would be great. Saying you're committed to something means you're actually going to take action in specific ways in pursuit of that goal. And I want to apologize, just if you can hear any little tip-tapping around, my 1,000-year-old dog has decided to take a walk in this room while I'm doing this program. So thanks for that, Ivan the Terrible. Hope you can't, hope it's not too distracting. All right. Commitments. So what are you committed to doing to reach your goals? It could be things like saying no to things or stop doing certain things. It could be your commitment to maintain focus. When you've decided that you're going to work on, you're going to try specifically to stay focused on what you're doing, kind of like this program this morning. Since you committed to be here for 30 minutes, then this is where your focus is for 30 minutes. And as soon as this is over at 8 o'clock or 8:01, your focus shifts to something else. You may be committing to adhere to a strategy, a process, or a routine that you've developed, something that's going to make you use your time more effectively. It could be a commitment to follow through, that once you have decided on something, that you will follow through. That's why it's important to only decide on very few things at a time, because when we decide about 10 things, it's very difficult to follow through on 10 things, not because we refuse to follow through on those things, but because we simply don't remember to follow through. There's just too much regular stuff in addition to these new things that we've committed to. You may commit to time blocking, and we don't have enough time here this morning to go into the details of time blocking, but in some cases it can be very valuable. Or you may have a commitment to being honest with yourself, which can also be fairly valuable. We can tell other people all sorts of things, but we cannot fool ourselves with what's going on and what the reality of our situation is. So then going down to the activities and tasks. Down there, oops. So tasks can be divided into three different categories. They're short-range tasks, things that you will complete in 2 weeks. That's one list of tasks. Long range are things that you are absolutely committed to do, but they are going to be further out than 2 weeks. Those would be on a different list of long range tasks. Often, or the ideal is that sometimes those long range tasks, when they become more important and more current, they are moved to your short range list. And then there's a third list of perhaps items. And those are things that are great ideas, but you're not necessarily committed to actually doing them. You just don't want to lose them. They could be a great idea, but they're neither long range or certainly not short range. And this fourth bullet here, the only reason I have it on here is I think it's so important in whatever goal you're trying to achieve and whatever commitments that are associated with those goals, whatever tasks have to happen to achieve those goals, that you relentlessly pursue ownership. Now, in many cases, if these are your personal goals, maybe you are the one who's responsible for everything to get them done, but maybe you're not. Maybe you hire contractors to do things, or maybe you have colleagues who are going to do parts of these things. Maybe you are leading up a team where they're going to have to execute some of these things. The most important thing when you've drilled down to what tasks are critical to the achievement of goals is that you relentlessly pursue ownership so that you know who is responsible for completing that task. And if anybody has ever been in a meeting where responsibilities have been bandied about, and then somebody says, well, who's going to do this? And then there's a little bit more conversation, there's a little bit more discussion, and then everybody leaves. And no one has ever really determined who is the one person who is owning that task. And so therefore, nothing gets moved forward. Even if it's kind of, well, this team is responsible for that task, it still won't get done because someone on that team has to take the leadership and the ownership for completing whatever that is. So in whatever you do, if the task is important enough that you see fit to moving forward with it to achieve a goal, and in alignment with a commitment, then someone specifically has to be responsible for that task. Tasks are how you spend your minutes every day. They're the things that are, they're the appointments that are on your calendar, certainly, but they're all the things that you're spending your time doing that are in pursuit of your goals. So how are you spending your time? It may be important to do a time study. And anytime I've had a client do one of these, once they find out what it is, they, for a short time, hate my guts. Because a time study is essentially looking at how you're spending your time now. And it literally is a form, which I'm happy to share with you. If you ever decide you want one, I'm happy to email one to you. Just email time study sheet in an email and I'll get one to you. But it's essentially having this piece of paper in front of you for several days. I tell people to do it for 2 weeks. No one on earth does it for 2 weeks. If you say 2 weeks, it'll often end up being 3 or 4 days. and see how you spend your time in 15-minute increments. I mean, for people who bill that way, it's a little bit easier because they're so used to it. But for those of us, it's interesting when people say, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was randomly surfing the web for an hour a day, little bits of time over time, but I lost an hour a day just randomly looking at news stories. So if you don't know how you're spending your time now, a time study can give you a really good idea of how you're spending your time. And if you do that now, instead of waiting until January, you can start making those shifts in order to achieve the goals, doing the tasks that are going to help you achieve the goals that you want once you hit January, because you've started to eliminate some of those things that are sucking away your time that could be spent on things that are more meaningful, whether they're work or whether they're personal. This isn't to say a time study is to indicate that you should never be doing anything for yourself. It's just that you want to be very aware of where your minutes are going. Okay. So I have one thing I want to do to wrap this up at the end, to kind of pull it all together in pursuit of these goals that you'll develop. But Lisa, does anybody have any questions that they want to shout out? Or Lisa, are there any in the Q&A box at this point?
There are. Andy asked, don't quarterly goals need to align with annual and your 25-year goals?
They can. I guess it depends. I mean, the 25-year goal, I guess, again, it depends on your age. But, some quarterly goals are simply things that you will achieve in that quarter, and they may or may not have a direct impact on an annual goal. And I guess it would be, I need to think of a specific example, which is going to elude me in this moment, but I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time making certain that they align, because truly it's more important that they align with your mission and your vision, which come out of your core values. If whatever goal you're creating aligns with your vision and your mission and is in alignment with your core values, then it's like my mom used to say, when you're decorating your house, if you buy things you love, only things that you love, eventually it'll all go together. Nancy might say that perhaps about clothes. I don't know if that would work with clothes or not. But anyway, when you buy things you love, it'll all work out. Well, it's kind of the same thing. If any goal that you create is in alignment with those two things, it should work out.
He's also asked, have you found that having a mentor or a coach helps to pinpoint your highest 3 goals?
Oh, having a coach is the smartest thing you could possibly do in your business career. No, I absolutely believe that having a thought partner, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a colleague you respect, whether it's a mastermind group, whether it's a coach, I absolutely believe that having someone to bounce ideas off of, or having someone who is skilled in pulling those ideas out of you. That's the one thing you do have to be careful of when it's just a friend or a colleague, that often they'll be more advice givers, where what you really want to do is to be able to pull that out of the other person. So it's coming from the core of who they are, as opposed to simply taking advice. But absolutely, it's worthwhile collaborating to help unearth some of those ideas.
One of the things that I found is that I did, like a dream board. And I actually had it up on my wall. And my coach said, that is way too much, because your head is just going boom, 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 which doesn't take much for me to do anyway. So she had me take down all the noise and just put up, this is my best year ever. So
okay.
With saying all of that, to say, going back to the quarterly goals, is it better to for me, quarterly seems better because, okay, by the end of March, I need to have this done versus, oh, I've got until December to do that. So is that helpful in that way? I'm going to cough, so I'm muting.
And so it absolutely is. And I think there's a couple things about that. One, the quarterly goals also help you. It helps you there's a sense of urgency. It also helps you pivot. I mean, because it's possible that if someone had a quarterly goal in 2020, they were far enough along, because essentially the first quarter was at the end of March. So perhaps they could have been far enough along to even achieve that quarterly goal, because it wasn't until mid-March, the second or third week in March, where everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket. So that is something. The other thing, in terms of being your best year ever, that's a tremendous mindset. And then what I'm talking about today is to turn that into, what are the ways that you're going to spend your minutes to make that happen? Because it's putting some teeth in that, because the only way you will make it your best year ever is to do specific things that in your understanding, in your mind, what a best year ever equals, and then what specifically are you doing to make certain that happens? Because that's where, when people say increase revenue, but it's like, that's not nearly enough. I mean, not only is that not the SMART, specific, measurable, all that kind of thing, but it's also the only way you get there is, what are you deciding to do this morning? And what are you deciding not to do this morning that will move you in that direction? And so that's why the whole minutes piece is important, and specificity.
Which really kind of plays into Eric's question. Is it a good idea to use a plan or to document and track the short-term and long-term goals?
Yes, I think I think people need to do what works for them. And I think if someone can achieve what they want to achieve by flying by the seat of the pants, great, it's okay with me. But if a planner is the thing that keeps you focused and keeps you from drifting off into something else, and helps you note what accomplishments you've made, I think it's really important for us not just to look forward at what we need to do, but take a moment, I call them moments of contentment, at what we have done, what we've completed. So I absolutely endorse the planner. I think that there's no one right thing that people need to know to test and see what works for them. And then when it works for you, keep it up, because nobody like me should be telling you you shouldn't or should do that if it already does work for you or it already doesn't work for you. It's being tuned in to how you work and what works for you that's important.
We are coming up right at 8 o'clock. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to ask Mary? Or Mary, I want to thank you for doing this. To me, there is no time like the present to start setting your goals, even on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, my allergies are.
Yeah, no problem. I feel terrible for you. That I can tell it's a tough talking situation. But I think this method is so key into figuring out how you're going to spend the rest of your day to day. If you've determined what activities and tasks you're going to do, and everything on the way up this process is in alignment, you will always be making decisions that work for you and that work for what you want to achieve. And that's where it's putting the work in advance, like now, to make certain that it's you're spending your time in 2021 in ways that help you get where you want to be, in a way that brings you some, not only success, but contentment.
Super. Heidi said she doesn't have any questions, but she really appreciates the nudge to getting her thinking about next year's goals.
Awesome. Thanks, Heidi. If anybody has questions or, just needs a tip or whatever, feel free to reach out. I phone or email. I think most of you know how to find me.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming this morning too.
Thanks everyone. Make it a great Tuesday.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.